a better example. If a burglar comes into the house, are we 50-50 defending each other?
Whoa,
The fuck no.
we're both in the house. We're both in the house.
No.
Wait, okay, I have another example. What if for the draft, should it be 50-50? 50% men, 50% women?
Going to war.
Drafting what?
Going to war. So if there's a war and they have to draft people, should it be 50-50?
Nope.
Why?
You're going to the war. I'm not going. I mean, it depends what. I'm gonna go to the war. Sorry. It depends what we're doing.
Yeah, I know. I'm
If I'm fighting,
No, fight, like
we're all
fighting,
gonna die.
combat.
Yeah,
So like to go to
Risk
war.
my life.
yeah, but she's not talking about
One at
you.
a time.
She's not talking about you either. She's talking about in general.
Yeah.
What? Why not?
Would you prefer if like
I would-
us stayed at home and you guys went to fight the wars, for example? You wouldn't, right?
You
Or
wouldn't
like in
care?
general.
Yeah,
I can't lie. When I said 50-50, I didn't mean like every single thing.
Yeah,
I meant like certain things.
Yeah.
So
It
it's
should
like
be
selective
50-50.
equality that you
So-
want.
Yeah, I know that sounds a bit
Is
mad.
that really
but
equality though?
So a common,
So
a
allow-
common-
allow-
guys, a common complaint I hear from men is that women only fight for equality when it doesn't benefit us, but we never want any of the drawbacks. So, for example, we'll happily take the free drinks, the free dates, and getting into bars for free. But if the roles were reversed, we would throw a fit if the men got into the bars for free and we had to pay.
That is
That's
true.
true. That's true. It's mad, but that's true.
It's true. I'm sorry.
And we never hear women talk about like we hear about the pay gap, but we never talk about how men have the harder jobs like plumbing, electric.
Building and
Yeah.
things.
Women do those jobs too.
No, they don't. Not statistics. It's like less than 2% in those industries. They don't.
So,
You
but
go to
out
those
of
jobs, you
those
see that.
women, how many of them are getting paid the same as the men that do the exact same job
That
as
is
them?
true. Yeah.
How many
women
get
get paid the
paid the same as men when you take into account the number of hours worked and you take into account the industries that they pick. There is no pay gap. It's been debunked multiple times.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say nowadays it doesn't exist because they've made the Equal Pay Act, right? Which was introduced in the 70s, right? I think yeah, people who use that, women that use that argument nowadays, they clearly haven't done their research. Fair enough, I understand that. And I think we as women, we do have privilege in certain contexts, and I do think that's unfair, personally, and I do think that should be addressed. And I think, I personally don't think about that, and I'm glad you brought that up because I don't consciously think about that. I don't get bought drinks often a lot in clubs, but if I do, I will take it. And I'm not going to go around buying a guy drink. Personally, I wouldn't.
I'd be scared, so I ain't taking
I
that.
would, thank you.
I wouldn't. But
I have to see you buy me that drink so you don't spiky.
Looking at you all the time like,
Yeah, I'm like,
that is a worry.
that is where it's scary.
Yeah.
it is worrying.
out
Sorry,
here.
what were you saying?
No, I was just saying I see your point there, and that in certain contexts we do have privilege, and I get your point about the pay gap. I don't think that is really an issue anymore, but I do think in certain industries like the plumbing and the whatever else you said, there are a lot less statistically women that are doing that. But I also think that we've been socialized to not want to do them jobs, and I still do think that is an issue, and I think that we should have more. I know there are opportunities out there, but I just feel like they're not advertised enough for us, and they should be pushed in things like secondary schools and primary schools, and they're not.
So how can we say they're not pushed on us when there are things like quotas for women? So
I don't even know what that is.
So a quota means basically that the company says you have to hire this many women. So I'll give you an example. My brothers work in engineering, and they can't convince girls to do that job. Like they recruit girls all the time, and girls just don't want to do it. So why do we assume it's society and maybe not something innate in us? Because if you go to the countries, so if you make a list of the countries from the most egalitarian, so like where women have the most freedom to the least freedom, the pay gap, it increases, it doesn't decrease. Because when women have more choice, they pick jobs with people, and men, when they have more choice, they pick jobs with things. And so like basically like, and I think that's because it's something innate in us. Like women, I just think are, because historically we had to nurture children, like we just prefer people, where men just prefer things.
Can I add on this? Because I'm actually going into the teaching profession in September. I think that's generally a profession that is dominated by women. you do need those interpersonal skills, those more kind of feminine, soft skills, as they call it, like those interpersonal skills to be able to engage with people, teach young children, to be able to safeguard them, and if there's something going on at home, etc., etc. But now there's a need for more men to be in the teaching profession, in these kinds of professions, because young kids need more male role models around, basically. I'm not saying that I'm a role model, obviously, but you're right. Like, there isn't this kind of argument, for example, where bricklayers are saying we need 50% women bricklayers. This disparity is terrible.
Or OnlyFans models, we need to pay them the same. Men and women. Strippers, models. No one's rioting because Kylie Jenner out earns like every male model.
Or I'm sure even another example, if we're going to talk about, say, for pornography, I'm sure
corn,
female.
Say corn on this.
I'm sorry, corn.
The algorithm.
Cornography.
Yeah.
Cornflakes. So if we're gonna, look at the pay disparity between the female performers and the male performers, I am 100% sure that the female performers get more money. But that's also an industry that is kind of geared towards a male audience who is obviously more likely to pay for women than they are for men. But should we be fighting for equal pay for male cornflakes, etc.? I don't know if we should. I think let the chips fall where they may.
No, we definitely shouldn't. There's more things to worry about than should men get paid equally on corn.
No, I agree. I agree.
No, I think it's more of like what people like doing. And like a lot of people talk about the 2%, like basically that CEOs, a very small percentage is women and all the people in power. But my dad, so he's in a top 1% earner. He's very successful. But the trade-off is you have to work 80 hours a week for 30 years. I don't know many girls that want to do that. I know I sure as hell would rather die than work 12-hour days every day. That sounds terrible. Yeah, you see. I'm like, I don't want it that bad. But a lot of times, like, we think it's because something in society is holding us back, but it's just what people want to do.
Yeah.
What kind of personality traits did your dad have to be that driven
Insane.
to work 80 hours a week every week? Because that's
my dad's just a workhorse. Like even he's retired now, and he's just starting another company. Like he can't rest.
Right.
Like there's just certain guys like that. But going back to we got a little off topic. Going back to the original question of like, should women settle? Question for the men, and Ish, you can be in this too. Do you think most girls think that they're hotter than they are?
Oh wow.
For the men.
Answer this carefully.
Look, I think people in general have great difficulty being objective about how they look. I think